This meeting is called to order at 6:33 p.m. on Monday, July 3rd, and this meeting is being recorded. Move to accept the minutes of our previous meeting held on Monday, June 26th, as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Minutes are accepted. I hesitated there because our agenda says June 26th on it. Okay, call to order, agenda approval, minutes, we got approval of payroll we've done, approval of vendors, correspondence review. We have a very interesting letter in here. Did you get a chance to look at this?
No, I did
Curtis,
not.
did you see this? All right. Somebody on Brook Street complaining about neighbors with 40 dogs that attack people. It's quite a lengthy document, so I'll just leave it here for you to review. What we'll probably have to do is follow up on this, though. I think what we're going to need to do is discuss this with Dave Ellis.
40 dogs.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to read the whole thing. It's too long for me to sit here and read the thing
Okay,
out
and
loud.
is it all right if I make copies, give one to Curtis?
Sure.
So you can take it home and we can review it at home?
Sure.
Okay? All right, thank you.
All right. So I'll move that we'll table that till next week.
Fine.
Okay. All right. Signature file review, old business. Complaint, Richmond Road waiting on nuisance ordinance. Okay, that's
So I still
number
has
2.
it?
The Ridley map, Attorney Hopkins Smith, anything new?
Yes,
Okay.
I did get a call. We are not complete.
Okay.
We are getting there.
All right.
There's been some movement, but we still do not have the owner. Okay, they're still working on it. This
Okay.
is big. But that's where we are, and he said he'd get back to us as soon as it was completed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
Okay, number 3, nuisance ordinance. We're still on hold for that.
Right, Si still has it.
All right, number 4, job descriptions. Curtis, anything new to add?
Forgot my book in the other truck.
All right, well, we'll wait till next week on that. Forensic audit. Mr. Graham will be back July the 13th. That'll be his, I think, his 3rd visit, Elizabeth?
No,
Second.
Second.
couldn't make it last week.
Oh, okay. All right. No smoking at the Samuel E. Paul Community Center. Did we get the signs up?
No, Bob was supposed to get the samples, and I don't think he got them. I
Okay.
haven't got a chance to talk to him yet. He wanted me to call him.
All right. Okay, mill tax bill. This is something we discussed last week. You wanted us to send the bills to the lien holders.
Yes. Because later, well, there's actually new information coming out. Is that you going to cover that when you talk about the mill?
Yep.
All right, so why don't we put that on hold until we'll lump it all in
we can
together.
go over that
Okay.
briefly. It's-
Municipal resources, I saw you had a card there.
That came in the mail today.
Yeah.
And we got an email from Cheryl White. I got that today.
All right.
Says, I talked with Debbie Fargo, town administrator, and Fitzwilliam about the MRI experience and cost. Fitzwilliam paid MRI $77.50 to do a classification plan, a compensation plan, and a salary analysis with recommended pay levels. MRI also reviewed the existing job descriptions. MRI has a menu of options that you can choose to have them do and the associated costs for each option. Debbie wasn't too happy with the job description review as she felt it was more boilerplate, and Debbie didn't think a review of their personnel policies was done. I hope this information is helpful. Cheryl White.
Okay.
So,
And just so for the record, Cheryl is a member of our budget committee.
correct.
She's also secretary to the select board in Fitzwilliam,
Correct.
which is how she has the contacts there. I think job descriptions being boilerplate is what we would expect. I wouldn't be surprised by that.
Right.
But it's something to look into. Do you want to talk to these folks?
I can.
All right. It sounds like a lot of money, but how many employees does Fitzwilliam have?
That I
know?
don't know.
More than we do. I do know that.
Highway barn, I think, has 7 people in the
Wow.
highway barn.
All right.
Not all full-time. I think 3 are part-time.
Yeah. So we might get by with less money if we do something with them. But I looked at that card earlier, and pretty much everything in the left column is stuff that we'd be interested in.
Right.
All right. So you want to give them a call in and
Yeah. I
see if
do
we can
that.
set up a meeting where we'll go over their menu of options,
All right. Have them come to one of our meetings
if it works
it's
for them. Yeah.
feasible. Oh yeah.
Second driveway on School Street. We have anything new on that?
I do not. I haven't.
That's, I think we're waiting on July 12th, isn't it?
No, that, remember we established last week that we had the driveways mixed up? Curtis was talking
Right.
about 25 School Street, not the Jones one,
Right,
where he put in the new driveway that he's let
Right.
grown in.
okay, so this is the 25 we're talking about here, Cindy's old building. And they have 2 driveways? And how long have they had the 2 driveways?
I believe it was established last week, about a year and a half.
Really?
Something kind of gone.
Yeah, I think that's what Jim
And
said.
the only thing that really brought to our attention was the mix-up of driveways. So that's the other issue.
Okay.
I don't know if there's how far back. you
So a
want.
year and a half ago, and they did not get permission, well, they didn't request a driveway
No.
permit, so.
Nothing came out of it.
All right, what do you think we should do?
Is Jimmy out there?
I believe no one's out there,
No.
lights are off.
Yeah,
Well, if you sit real still, the lights go off.
Well, I'm sure he would have moved by now.
Even when no one's out there, the lights go on.
Is this, I'm not familiar with this building, is this it's an apartment building, right?
It is. Has 2 apartments, a left and a right.
Right.
And there's a garage on the. If you're looking at the house, there's a garage on the
Right.
left-hand side, and that's the initial driveway that
Right.
they had. It's that one's actually.
Now wait, you're back at the old house.
I'm Cindy's old house. Yes. Not the other one. It's at the end of School Street. This one's by the church.
The one right before the church,
Right.
Catholic church.
Okay, so that only is supposed to, you're correct, have 1 driveway, and that's where Helping Hands used to store in that
Right,
garage.
okay.
Yes.
But
Yes.
the way you're describing this house, this is a duplex essentially.
Correct.
Yes.
A
it
left and
is.
a right. Would that qualify them for a second driveway?
I was told no at the
No,
planning board
it
because
will-
they're only
no.
allowed 1 cut
Per home,
per
dwelling.
per dwelling.
But is that 1 dwelling or 2 dwellings?
Be considered 1 is what
I
we were
believe it's
discussing.
considered one, even though the building's split.
Right.
I think if it originally was built way back when with 2, it'd be grandfathered in.
I'm suspecting it was built as 1.
Yeah.
Yes,
It was
it was.
originally a single-family home. I believe it was turned into a duplex at some point.
Right,
That's why the existing driveway was used for both sides.
right.
And I think the issue is they built the second driveway recently. It's not one that's pre-existing and been refurbed or anything.
Did they actually, that's a question I had gotten, did they actually build another driveway, or did they just keep riding in on the lawn?
They actually built it. They
Yeah.
gravelled it.
Oh, they did.
They did do
brought
some
in
mild
hard pack.
cutting.
Are there sidewalks on that side of the street?
Yes.
Did they cut into the sidewalk?
They went on either side with gravel. So I don't think they really cut into it. They just dug up enough to drop a load of gravel. That's what it looks like. I
can't
haven't gone
picture
over
this.
and
Okay,
inspected it.
all right,
This is just driving by. You see there's gravel that's not higher than grass, so they had to scrape down a little bit.
all right.
And they brought new material in, and there's the awning or
All right,
stand-up garage type thing that's on that on the right-hand side now.
okay.
Of course,
I think I need to go by and take a look at it. It's hard to picture.
but it's just before the church on the right.
So the numbering starts by the school and works down.
Well, if you're gonna go down School Street, it'll be on the right-hand side, just before the church.
Just before the church,
It's a
okay.
red building.
It's number 25.
I think so. Yeah.
All right. I just assumed number 25 would be near the end of the street. So which end do the numbers start at on School Street?
They start closest to the school.
That's what I was thinking. Okay, all right.
So I think the other one in question is 30, right?
Right, second to last one.
Your second to last one.
All right, why don't we table this until next week? And each of us, well, you've already seen it, right? Have you seen it, Barb?
No, but
Take a ride over there, and then next week, I'll do the same thing. Next week, we'll know what we're talking about,
okay.
okay? Is Jimmy coming in tonight?
Well, he was supposed to.
All right.
We don't know.
If he doesn't, would you ask him to pop in next week? And then we'll discuss this with him next week. Okay. Okay, fundraiser. Ben, do you have anything to offer on that?
Nope, I don't have anything to add at this point. I know Mark is working on it.
Okay.
So, he did, Herb gave him my phone number on Friday, so he'll
Okay.
be reaching out to me soon. And I'm sure we'll see some traction on that in
Good.
the coming weeks, so.
Okay, good, thank you.
Yep.
O'Brien building permit, I think that's, is that this?
Mike
No.
Papa's.
What's the O'Brien building
That's the
permit?
one that, Curtis has to bring to the planning board.
Tomorrow,
Yeah.
that's the one.
Oh,
we
that's
have.
one, that's left over
So
from last
we
week,
have it as a
okay,
site plan and everything.
all right. Next, Joint Loss Management Committee meeting, July 11th, 9 AM at Town Hall. And Alissa and I will be there. I don't think anybody else
No.
here is gonna be there, okay. Okay, exhaust brake ordinances, we talked about this last week. Our insurance company recommends that we withdraw all of our ordinances, so this is what I'm proposing as an ordinance. Paragraph 1, all existing ordinances concerning the use of exhaust brakes, commonly called Jake brakes, within the town of Troy, New Hampshire are hereby repealed. Paragraph 2 of this ordinance will go into effect immediately. So we'll schedule a public hearing on this. How far out do we have to give notice on that, Alissa?
7 days, isn't it?
Is it 7 or 5? So, all right, let's schedule it for 2 weeks from tonight. This is not time critical, so.
Especially in a holiday week, some people may not be out or may be out.
Well, actually, holding a public hearing on something like this is just a formality. I don't think we're gonna get a lot of input on it.
Probably not,
17.
though.
17?
17,
People get
okay.
antsy when they don't hear stuff.
So we'll hold the public hearing within the selectmen's meeting on the 17th.
So we gotta put it
time
on
do you want?
Facebook and post it everywhere? Like
We have
discussed before?
to post it in 2 places.
Right, remember we discussed it before, we're gonna not do the minimum, we're gonna
Right.
post it everywhere
Right.
as much as possible.
Yeah.
So if anybody does wanna say anything, they have
It'll
the
be on, I'll
opportunity.
put it on the website as well as a Facebook post.
Okay.
Yeah. But we still have to put it up. Well, actually, putting it on our website counts as one of the 2 required postings.
It does.
Yeah. It didn't before because we didn't have a website that was really functional.
Right.
But now we do. So putting it on here counts as one of the 2, and putting it on the wall out by the town clerk's office counts as the other one. If we want to post it more places, we can. But I think if we put it on here and talk about it on Facebook and explain what we're doing.
Alright,
I don't see a lot of interest in this ordinance.
What time do you want it scheduled for?
6:15.
We start at 6:30,
I'm sorry, 6:45.
What's the date of that Monday?
July 17th.
Thank you.
town, what's it called, public hearing?
Mm-hmm.
That
Sure.
main part.
So you do not want it in the newspaper? Just the website?
Is a newspaper required?
I don't think it is.
Would you check on that? If it is, put it in. If it's not, don't. You know, there are some things, if we're going to do an ordinance, there would be a lot of public interest in it. This is really a housekeeping issue.
And we do need to do it. It's
Yeah,
not an option.
just to satisfy the insurance company.
Right.
Okay, Troy Redevelopment Group. Now, the way we left that, they think they no longer exist. I think, well, actually, we're going to discuss that with your thing.
Yeah, that's
All right,
part
fine,
of-
we'll
part
skip
of
over
that.
that for now.
Yeah.
All right, new business, complaint letter, we already covered that. Letter from Cheryl White about MRI, we covered that. Greg Johnson at HG Johnson Real Estate has a renter who would like to rent space in Troy Mills.
He called me.
Yep.
I said, we do not know the status. He said, if we find anything out, we'll let you know.
Okay, now, there are tenants over there now. Doc Shred, do we know if they're paying rent to anybody?
They are paying rent to a company.
I'll get into that too.
Oh, okay, all right, well, yeah,
all
half
sorts
our
of
agenda.
Yeah, that's.
Okay, all right, we'll leave
We'll
that.
knock all these off in one.
All right.
one sitting.
Okay, I added a couple of things on here.
Yeah, right.
Dollar General, Bob Hebert and I went over there Friday for the fire inspection. He did the inspection, I was just there to issue the certificate of occupancy if they passed it. There were a couple of things they needed to tune up, so they're gonna do that and give us a call, and then we'll go back over there, and they should be ready to go. They're gonna start putting in their display fixtures on the 10th. They said it takes about a week to do that, then they'll start moving merchandise in, and within a week after that, they'll probably be open. So by the end of July, they should be up and running. Recreation Committee organization, do we have anything further to do on that?
I have to do up the appointment paper. It's still
Okay.
sitting over there.
And I got the paperwork to swear everyone.
Okay.
in.
All right, that covers everything on the agenda. Actually, the week ahead, Alyssa, I wanted that after guests. That should be the last thing we do before we
We
adjourn.
want it switched.
Yeah. Unless we have a non-public session, then it'll be the last thing before we do the non-public at the end. And that's just where we review what meetings we have coming up in the next week. Okay, Ben.
Okay. First thing, the correspondence file probably should have had a copy of that email that was circulating from Janet, right, about the bequest money and the investment, the status of the investment.
Yeah.
So I'll bring it up now, but I believe that would
Allan.
normally end up in the.
Allan came in today and looked at it.
Okay.
Curtis knew about it.
Okay, yeah, you're last to find out because we don't have your email address. So, it turns out that the bequest investment is still on hold. So I don't know a lot about it. I just heard it from Janet. It was still in the regular account, and so I reached out to Norm Dion to see what happened. So hopefully I can share some information with you folks. And he said at their meeting immediately after the meeting that was held here, where you guys said go ahead and invest the money. Basically, the whole town was saying that. They got hung up on an RSA of some description. So I don't know if it was surrounding the fact that it was a expendable trust, and for an expendable trust, it's very much like a I'm drawing a blank on the term for like what the highway department has for buying major equipment purchases and things like that.
Capital reserve.
Yeah, capital reserve. Thank you. So I have a feeling it's something to do with that, but I reached out to Aaron Pat today. He's the one that had the concerns, and I reached out to him today, and I didn't get any response. So, or I didn't get an answer. I didn't leave a message either. I know Herb has sent him an email to see if he'd get back in touch with us. But so what they did was they sent correspondence to DRA and the charitable trust unit with this concern. And they said, hold everything, we need to make a decision. So Terry Knowles, I think, is the one currently making a decision about it. I left a message with DRA, and I hadn't heard back from them. And they might be out of the office today, I don't know. It's a
Holiday weekend.
Yeah, it's a holiday week, so I'm not really sure what's going on there. But so yeah, so that's all I know, but I figured I'd just update
Okay,
the
in
whole
fact,
board.
I did know that. Janet called me last week
Okay.
to see if, why the money hadn't moved, and
Yep.
I said, we don't know.
Yep.
We're
yep.
out of it.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, and that's what it ended up being. So, but I know we're all anxious to get it going. So it was, and I don't know. It sounded like from Norm that they were just going to wait for a response from Terry. So we might be giving them a few phone calls to try and
All right.
prompt a little bit quicker.
Thank you
response.
for doing that.
Yeah, not to be jerks or anything, but just
Yeah.
make sure we don't wander too far down the pile of things to do up there. So, because Norm thought, based on his experience with that department, it might be the end of the summer before we hear back from him. So that.
They too take a while too.
What
Yeah,
was
exactly.
Aaron's concern?
It's
Just
not
the wording
clear.
of it?
Well, so this is what happened. He sent a letter to, and of course Norm calls it a letter. I don't know if it was an email or an actual physical letter. And he said that he was copying DRA, Charitable Trust Unit, and here, this office. So you guys never received that, so I don't know exactly what. But I'm assuming inside that letter, it has exactly what his concerns
Okay.
were. So it'll come to light in short order, I'm
All right.
sure. But we just figured it out on Friday, so that's, you guys are as up to speed as I am on the situation, so. And we'll keep you posted if we come across anything different, so, or anything new.
Ben, did you ask Jamie for a copy of that letter or no?
She hasn't gotten back to me. I left her a message on Friday, and yeah,
Okay.
and I called at like 4:04 on Friday, so I'm assuming they're out of there by then, but, so.
4:30.
Okay, so yeah, so she didn't have a chance to get back to me then, and whether she's in the office today or not, I'm not really sure. So I did call her today, but I didn't get an answer, so. Yeah, so that's that. What I wanted to talk about tonight was, we were in a couple weeks ago, and there was, Troy Mills has kind of been popping up weekly, basically, whether it's Troy Redevelopment Group or Troy Mills or whatnot. And it was a couple weeks ago, I think we were at basically a spot where we don't know who owns it. There was that we kind of had that end point. So Herb and I thought, well, let's see if we can dig something up and figure out what's going on here. So without having a true title opinion done by an attorney. We can't say exactly for sure, but we are 99.9% sure this is what took place. So looking at the Registry of Deeds, we can see that the deed was transferred from Troy Mills Inc. to the Troy Redevelopment Group.
Back
And it was
in
done so.
15 years ago or so, wasn't it?
Yep, and it was done so via the bankruptcy trustee. So Troy Mills Inc.'s bankruptcy, not TRG's bankruptcy.
Right, the recent one.
Yeah, 10 or 12 years later. So, so that solves that problem. That's pretty much, that's who owns it. TRG owns the building. Now you can see that, and I'd have to dig deeper to figure out exactly what the details were here, but you can see that at the time it appeared that Bob Hanson was involved, the town of Troy was involved, TRG, bankruptcy court, the DES and the CDFA did not come in. There's a couple of liens on the property from those guys. That didn't come in until later. But you can see everybody was working together because not only did the property transfer to TRG, but a mortgage to the town was granted at the same time to protect our interest in assuming based on back taxes,
Right.
1.2 million. So so that's the beginning of the whole story, and then there's mountains of documentation in there that supports Hanson's plan. They were looking at other developers at the same time. They had multiple things going on. So there's a lot of stuff going on. I don't know how relevant all of that is until we get past what I'm going to describe next. But so we fast forward to January 12th, 2015. In non-public session, the select board had a meeting with the board of directors of TRG at the time. And they did it through a non-public session, and they had
What was the date on
January 12th, 2015.
that? Okay, all right.
Because you became a selectman in September 2015.
Yeah, I just don't remember this meeting. I was with a member of Troy Development Group,
Well, okay.
and I resigned from that group when I became a selectman.
You weren't on the group yet. This was with the prior.
This is the old group.
This is the old.
Oh,
group.
I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead.
So this is why I'm doing this, just because when we dug through it, it was like
Yeah.
we need a timeline here to figure out what the heck happened,
Yeah.
who was where and when, and why. So on that day, they came in, sat down, met. The problem with that meeting was, I believe, that the select board at the time and leading up to that time was basically telling Troy Redevelopment Group, don't tell us anything. We don't want to know anything about what's going on down there because they felt like it was a liability. I don't really understand why that was the thought process, and we got that information from Norm Dion, who was on the original TRG from day one. So that's kind of why when they showed up at that meeting, they had this offer in hand. I think two selectmen were ready to go on it in non-public session, and Gideon at the time was like, whoa, time out. And of course he went to the paper, so they kind of blew up the whole deal. The town got upset. Everybody came in. It was, for lack of a better word, it was a shit show. So, so that kind of, so the very next thing that happened was, so on the 20th, so that meeting happened. The information came out in the newspaper. On the 20th of that same month, they had another meeting. Everybody was in here. There's quite an uproar going on apparently. And they decided to table it until after town meeting. So, and what they did at town meeting was they put an article in to do an appraisal of Troy Mills. So we have an appraisal in there from the March timeframe of 2015. I have not looked at that yet. So
I have.
there was some comments in there about it having no value.
Correct.
Right. So, but
In other words, the cost of rehabilitating it would be greater than the value after rehabilitating it, which is the
Makes sense.
definition of bankrupt.
yeah, yeah, exactly. It's insolvent. So, so we fast forward. We get through the end of and so at this point, during that the January 20th situation, the entire TRG board resigned. They said, we're out, we're done. Bob Hanson pulled out. He said, we're done. After that, the select board reached out to Bob Hanson directly and offered another deal. You'll see that deal in here. I looked it over in its entirety. It's the one for $1. If we we should never do that deal. Basically, we went from selling it to him for $400,000 with a whole bunch of stipulations in a contract to selling it to him for $1 and waiving the $1.2 million on top of that. So it was like, I don't even know how that happened, but it basically what you can see based on the letters from Bob Hanson was on the 28th day of April, they entered into a 32-day contract with him, basically saying, you keep putting insurance on the property, you keep the security guy around, we'll, at the end of the 30 days, we will have appointed a new TRG board, and we will recommend to them this new deal for $1 or whatever. So May 28th, Bob Hanson sent a letter, said, nobody's gotten in touch with me. It was a pretty nasty letter by the looks. Nobody's gotten in touch with me, I'm out. So as of the 30th, I'm done. So May 30th, 2015, the property has been unsecure and uninsured since that time.
Yep.
So so that has its own concerns as we move forward here. So the appraisal was done per the town's request and approval through the article process. The appraisal, it came back what it came back. I think TRG thought there was more value in the new TRG thought there was more value in the property than what Hanson was offering, so I think that's kind of why they didn't even speak to him about it. So we go for months up until September. The new board was, I have a list of new board members. There's a ton of information too. We got to figure out a way that we can share it between you guys, hopefully the TRG board when that resurrects at the end of this conversation. I'll tell you my thoughts on that. But there's a ton of information, so I have some ideas as to how we can make this information a little more readily available than some boxes full of paperwork over here. So at this point, the new TRG board's trying to figure out what to do. Bob Hanson's gone, we're uninsured down there. The new TRG board is actually collecting $2,500 a month from the DocuShred. So that happened up until December 7th, or whether they paid the November payment or the December payment, I'm not really sure. But on December 7th of 2015, the new TRG board decided to file bankruptcy. So I've reviewed the entire bankruptcy, the whole petition, everybody that was involved. That also gives you pretty clear evidence that TRG is the true owner, and the hierarchy of liens on the property being DES first, CDFA second, and then Town of Troy third. So we go all the way until October 4th, 2016. The bankruptcy case was closed. Well, it was closed because the trustee took possession of the property and then decided to not do anything with it because he found the same thing that the appraisal found. It's not worth anything.
Plus he found another job.
That too.
Yeah.
That too. So there was some push for him to get out of there. So he basically did what they call an abandonment of the property. So he abandoned it, which basically leaves TRG the owner and all of the liens intact. They closed the bankruptcy, which basically means that the bankruptcy never happened. So that's where we're at as of October 4th, 2016. So a lot of this information has come through documentation, the agreements and things like that. I shared some of that. That's just a drop in the bucket compared to what's out there for information. But you guys do have that part of it. A lot of the other information was coming from like Don Upton, who was on the original TRG board. I don't know if I said Norm Dion before, but I meant Don Upton. It was on the original TRG board. Herb spoke with him for a while, and he said, if you need any information, he's got mountains more than we have here, apparently. So, and then we talked to Dick Baxton about his involvement, which the new TRG board was several budget committee members. You were on it for briefly, and then Dick Baxton and Mike Walsh. Mike Walsh was the president.
Right.
But Dick was, I think he was kind of the voice of the whole operation.
Yeah, he was the vice president.
Right.
And we actually created the position so that he'd have a title.
Yep.
Because he was going to be dealing with other real estate professionals.
Yep.
We wanted him to have
Yep.
some clout.
Yeah, and I think he's a pretty good addition to the board. I mean, he's obviously having some real estate ties is important for this project.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So we did talk to him, And basically what their plan was, they created and I don't have that with me here, but they created a resolution within within TRG that said that both Mike and Thaxton were going to move forward with bankruptcy and dissolution of TRG. Okay, so somewhere along the way they left it with the attorney, so the whole bankruptcy happened, but the dissolution never actually happened. So the Secretary of State stepped in sometime in the past year or so, I don't know the exact date, and did an administrative dissolution. So what that means is for 3 years you can basically open the company back up. You just have to, file some paperwork,
Yeah.
pay your dues. There's a few things that you have to jump through. There's different time frames. Like if you do it within 120 days, it's very easy to do. If you do it in the next 2 years or something like that, it's a little bit more difficult. And then after the 3-year period, you have to actually have it's like a panel or something from the state that has to approve the reinstatement of your company. So I believe that it's still in the earlier stages. So TRG, should they get back together, should be able to get the company up and running in pretty short order. So the way we left it with Dick was he was going to try to reconvene the old board because they thought that they were like dissolved, meaning we're no longer board members, and actually technically they're still all the same board members.
Right.
Unless there's a stack of resignations in this office somewhere.
As far as I know, only one person ever submitted a written resignation.
And that was you, right? Because you were going to the select board,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So based on our interpretation of the situation, they are still the members of a kind of defunct nonprofit, which can easily be rectified. So Thaxton will be trying to get everybody together to basically find out, what do y'all want to do? Do you want to, because he said, well, if we're, you know how Dick is, he can be a joker sometimes. He said, well, if we find out that we're actually not dissolved, you might find a stack of resignations on the selectman's desk come Monday, So, but getting beyond that, that might be the case. But he's going to get them all together to talk about it first to see if that's what they want. That's what they want to do. So I talked to Curtis on Friday, filled him in on all of this, just because I know he's. I think when you first got in here, you were basically assigned the Troy Mills project as the point person.
He assigned it to himself.
No, I was just
and we
going to
didn't
say, he
argue.
volunteered. We didn't assign anything.
Well, whatever. That's the way I took it. So that's why I reached out to you and kind of got you up to speed there. And I think as far as the initial meetings with TRG, when they happen, I'll be there, and I'm sure that would be good for you.
How do you feel about accepting an appointment to the TRG?
I would be fine with that. Actually, I came across the bylaws today, which the only thing I had concerns about was liabilities associated. It's a little alarming when you look at a bankruptcy and you see the names of the board members in it. That scares me. I know all too much about bankruptcy to not let that get to me. But the bylaws are pretty clear on liability and all that. I mean, unless it's something hugely negligent that the board does, knowingly negligent. But I think both Herb and I want to be heavily involved. So I think what needs to happen is we're going to find out what the current board wants to do.
Right.
I think if we see a pile of resignations come through, I think Dick's still interested for sure. We haven't talked to anybody else, so I think he's definitely interested. And
Or you could also talk to some of them this Thursday night at the bike.
Yes, I will. I plan to. Yeah, because I think Becky, Lisa,
and Rob and Lisa.
Yeah,
all three.
Yeah, so all three of those guys were on it. I did reach out to Mike Stedman. It's spelled Mickle, but I think it's Michael.
It's pronounced Michael. Yeah.
It's Michael, okay, yeah. I did reach out to him because he was the treasurer. So backing up a little bit, they were collecting money for a period of time. So there is an account somewhere with some money in it. It cost him $5,000 to have the bankruptcy done. So some money was gone from the account for that, but there's got to be some money. It's accounted for somewhere. I just don't know where I don't know if it's in the tax.
It may just be a stack of bank statements too.
Yeah, exactly. And on top of that, some of the other stuff that I know is a little bit grapevine stuff that I don't want to send around and talk about. But the DocuShred down there, I believe that they reached out when they were notified about bankruptcy. They reached out to maybe their attorney or somebody, and was recommended that they just hold the money. Like, don't spend it, you know, put it in an account until the
escrow,
bankruptcy
yeah.
is sorted out, but I don't think anybody's contacted them since. I have reached out to them, I'm waiting for a call back from the owner, so.
Okay.
So we'll see what happens there. And if TRG gets back together, first order of business is certainly getting some more security, because I feel like the town has got some liability at this point, because at some point you really need to condemn a building. I don't know anything about that, but at some point you need to condemn a building and
Yeah.
you know, and make sure that at least provide some level of security so that nobody gets in and gets hurt.
Right.
A couple of things that were a little bit alarming that we found out. In this process, I actually went and took a tour of the building, so I'd never been in there before. So I went and walked all through, and I found 2 art studios in there. So, so come to find out, our tenant Chris Sheldon is renting from there, but he's not. He's just using it because.
He was the only one I was aware of.
I had heard, but that was a rumor, so and
Yep.
I never went and checked.
Yeah. So he's in there, and there's actually select board minutes from, what was it? Actually, I think I have it written down here.
Well, somebody else had a auto repair thing going on.
Yeah, the
in
building.
garage.
That's gone. That's gone. I don't
Okay.
think that's around anymore. So all we have is those art studios, and then we have the DocuShred. Now, DocuShred is in what I believe the building they call the high bay. I
Yeah.
keep seeing that term, and I'm assuming that's what you're talking about. So they're in the high bay, and I think that's probably the most secure part of the property. I mean, the safest part.
Well, I'm
of the
sure
property.
they've secured it.
I'm sure they have, and I don't mean from
And
like
it's a
that
modern building,
standpoint,
yeah,
but I mean from like a liability standpoint, like if
Right.
somebody gets hurt down
Oh,
there.
yeah.
But the rest of the building, nobody should be in that whatsoever. I'm not really sure why TRG rented it in the first place. Maybe they had it more secure at the time, but some things
Well, somebody was, one of Hanson's people was maintaining that property. In fact, he was living on the premises.
yeah. So and that might have been the security person that he was paying for over that time. So yeah, a lot of this stuff is a little bit unknown, but I don't think it's relevant. One thing that is true is somebody's still using a dangerous portion of the building. You know, and he was actually in a couple weeks ago talking to somebody, I'm not sure who, maybe the police department. I think he was at the police department asking them, and I could be wrong, so I'll stand corrected if this isn't correct, but he was asking for permission to conduct a photo shoot with models and everything in that part of the building. And I can see why he'd want to, because this is like all cool structures and everything,
Right.
but it's totally dangerous, and we should not be any
And
part of
this
that.
is the other person, not Chris Sheldon?
This is Chris Sheldon.
Oh, this was Chris,
This was
okay.
Chris that came down and asked somebody, some official in town. I'm not sure exactly who. So, and that was a couple of weeks ago. So as of recently, officials in town have engaged with Chris and made him believe that it's okay for him to be in there. Which I mean, it's
Well, I
fine for
don't
him, right? Up until something bad happens.
Right now, this office has never heard.
That's okay. We
Thing
don't.
about
It's one of those things where I think we just got to get on top of it. Once TRG gets put back together, they've got to, you know, and maybe we can, you know, Herb and I, he rents from us, so maybe we can just talk to him and say, hey, this isn't safe. I mean, what are the chances you can find another place to go, and he might just do it on his own, you know, because we have the town nor us have any sort of authority to evict him, right? Because he's basically I think by law he's like a month-to-month tenant at this point. That's where the town, if you'd known that and we were worried about it, we would be maybe condemning the property or taking some sort of action. I don't know
Right,
the
but if
condemnation
TRG is still intact and is still
Mm-hmm.
the owner, then we don't have the authority to evict them anyway.
Well, no,
TRG.
but I think if you have a building that's so dilapidated and the owner is
condemn-
willing to
oh, yeah.
rent it out to
Right.
people and we know all about it, I feel like the town has some sort of obligation to, I don't know, step in from a public safety standpoint. I don't really know what the rules
If
are.
we
but-
were to do that and condemn the building, that might seal its fate.
Oh, it might, and I'm not jumping to that. I'm just
Right.
saying that because we haven't done that, I
Yeah.
think we have some liability here
Yeah.
to some degree. And I'm really speaking out of turn when it comes to the condemnation of a building. I don't know anything about that. So, but as far as somebody being in there, we were in there and it was like, this is scary. You know, it's really, nobody should be in there. The little partition walls that they put up to keep somebody from walking right off the third story and dropping
Yeah.
have fallen in. You know, so they're not even being those partitions are not even being maintained, obviously. So that's a concern, and just not having any insurance on the property at all is a concern. We talked to Mark Huntoon on Friday, Herb did, just to check because we had heard that he had a standing order for his men not to go in there should a fire occur. They were going to do it as a defensive fire and fight it from the outside. Well, things change when you realize there's somebody stuck in there. So not only are we risking that person that's in there's life, or you know, our volunteer fire crew is also at risk should something like that happen. So anyway, so that's just something that came up that I thought that's alarming. We've gotten away with it this long. I think we've been lucky, you know. He's got, and Chris has got makeshift heaters and stuff in there, so there's definitely, yeah. And not that he's doing anything wrong. He's come down and checked, and there's you can see evidence of him coming into town and making sure it's still okay type of thing, and he hasn't been told no. So I think the first time he came in during the bankruptcy, the select board at the time said, well, if you haven't received an eviction notice, you don't have to leave. So that was their stance on it at that point. So, and that's in the minutes along the way too. So that's why I kind of feel like we end up with a little bit of liability, because there's a pretty good documentation trail that shows that we, the town, knew that he was in there this whole time. So yeah, so Mark Huntoon and the fire situation there. Yeah, so that was the point of why I wanted to come in, was just kind of give you guys a timeline and who I could tell owned it, and just so you have more information. It just sounded like you were at a little bit of a standstill. Like we were waiting on Cy Little for something, and you had talked to several attorneys, but weren't getting clear answers, and
Right.
so that's why we just started digging. And I mean, it just really took a matter of putting together this timeline to figure out what the heck happened. So I think in the end, though, it's all good news, because TRG is not gone. I mean, because what if it was dissolved? What do you do then? You know, so the owner of the building doesn't own it anymore. You know. So I think keeping it on the tax rolls, going back to some of the comments that we had earlier that we were hoping to be answered by this discussion, keeping it on the tax roll makes sense, because if nothing ever happens with it between now and then, now in the 3 years when we can actually take it back for a tax deed, at least we can own it free and clear at that point, void of all liens and all of that. So, and notifying all the appropriate people along the way, because I think it was only going to the bankruptcy trustee, and like you know, he's off doing something else. So I think it's making it to the
I
courts.
believe he was not an employee of the U.S. Bankruptcy Court.
Nope.
He was under contract to them.
Right. Yeah, because the trustee's office, the way that works is they aren't, they're like a
Referees, they call them.
exactly. Yeah, that's a good way to
Yeah,
describe it.
they're contracted out.
Yep. So
I think what happened was, I think his law firm had the contract,
Yep.
and he changed firms.
Yep.
So that's why
'cause
he
has
got
to be
out of it.
He has to be discharged from the case. I think the judge told him,
Right.
you have not administered the estate. So he took care of that by abandoning the property back to TRG.
Right.
So, and they looked at it, and it basically says there is nothing to administer, because you've basically given everything back to TRG.
Yeah.
So.
Right.
So maybe the thing to do is to go bankrupt again.
No, okay, so let's talk about that for a second. So the ultimate result of this bankruptcy, I'm glad it didn't come to fruition, because the ultimate result of the bankruptcy would have been so a little more aggressive trustee would have sold the property to the highest bidder,
Right.
divvied up whatever was available to all the lien holders, and we'd have a new property owner down there at God knows what, $100,000. I mean, if you wanted to, sell it to the highest bidder, and unless you get major opposition that actually has reasonable grounds to oppose such a sale, there's nothing to really stop that.
Yeah.
So now TRG absolved. We don't own the property anymore. We don't owe the money anymore. We're good. We can dissolve the nonprofit, and everybody can move on. Well, the town of Troy gets the short end of the stick, so to speak, because you end up with who knows who owning it. Not a developer that's worked on it for 10 years, that's for sure. Or maybe it is. Hopefully it'd be that guy that bought it, but you never know. So that bankruptcy is definitely not the answer in my estimation. So, but I think that there's a lot of meat in what was going on over those 10 years. And to have that all blow up over the course of 2 select board meetings seems like a disaster that needs to be revisited. That's
We do that a
my
lot.
thoughts on it. But this one was a big one, you know. It really went public, like it just, and there was a lot of people that came in that really were adamant against it that weren't working on it for 10 years. And I think the problem was that TRG wasn't notifying everybody of, hey, this is what we got going on. I mean, they've got, I think the Brownfield site was like $1.6 million in the end to clean up the whole thing down there, and it's they consider it a developable site at this point. So that's a lot of work that's happened on this thing that we haven't had to pay for. So I don't know. There just seems like there's a lot of good stuff in here from what they had going on with Bob Hansen at the time. There was some popularity issues with the deal, so that's what grenaded the whole thing. But
I think the only
He's
time we
still
ever
around,
heard
so.
from Mr. Hansen was at town meeting. Once a year, he came in and
yeah, because
laid out because I remember sitting there
yeah.
as a community member and him getting up and saying, okay, this is what we did during the year. This
Yep.
is what we're going to do. This is how we're moving forward.
Yep.
And I don't think we had any communication other than that. I never saw any.
Yep, no, and I
throughout the
think
year.
that was by design. That's how it was designed, and that's not the right way to do it, I don't think. I think it should be a pretty close relationship between this select board and TRG once they get reformed.
And
Oh.
Jack Dugan was part of that too, initially.
Yep.
Another
Yep,
developer out of Keene.
yep. And I saw some other names in there that I haven't identified yet that look like developers as well. We had, I came across some bios today that of developers, so they were looking at multiple people,
Yeah.
trying to figure out who was the right fit. And of course, you know, talk about the timeline. Everything was they were going gangbusters down there. This was going to be they had taken deposits on condos,
Yeah.
so this was ready to go. Well, then October 2008 happened, and here we are. So, you know, this real estate market crashes to you know, unprecedented degree, and so they, of course. They continued to work, and I think the ideas changed. It's like an industrial complex with a vertical farming program or something like that.
Hydroponics.
Hydroponics, yeah. So yeah. So there's a lot in here, and I think it'd be in the best interest of the town for TRG to get back together. You know, because
You're
think about all
100%
this
correct.
for like Herb and I to go through, and you guys to go through, and not to have a dedicated group to be dealing with it. So. Unraveling the whole thing, or putting it back together.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was our research. That's what we came up with, and I'm just here for informational purposes only.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. The another thing too, I was talking about sharing information. What I've been doing is scanning a lot of this stuff and putting it into a Dropbox folder, and I can share that with all of you guys so that you can. And I get it relatively organized, like the bankruptcies in a folder, and you know, and TRG's. Organizational documentation is all in one, you know, so it should be pretty well organized so that we can digest it a little bit easier as we go along here. So if I can get everybody's email, I can just send it out to you guys.
I also, did I tell you I called Eversource? Because when Bob Hansen left, he made a deposit of $2,500 to the Eversource to pay for the 3 bills that were in there.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to find out if that actually got paid or if it didn't get paid or what was going on with it. So I called Eversource. I talked to Sharon Gilman. She handles the bankruptcy out of Connecticut, and she was reading her paperwork, and she asked me several times who I was, and I had to explain to her. I said, well, anyway, she did give me some information that on the 3 accounts, and the way they read it is because it said that there was no resolution, but the person was dissolved. The person working the case was dissolved. So they took it as they wiped out those bills. So we don't owe Eversource anything.
Can we get that money back?
Well, there's $977 credit.
Oh, okay.
Well, it's funny because when you look at the bankruptcy, so I use this site called Pacer to look at this stuff. I used to do this for a long time for the credit union.
Yep.
And when you look at it, it says standard discharge on there.
Right.
And anybody that knows bankruptcy would look at the summary page and assume that it was discharged. Discharge means all debts discharged, the estate's been settled, all of that. Well, if you don't look any further, you don't realize that, oh wait, they owe the money to everybody.
Right.
TRG still owes the money to everybody. So.
Because I asked Eversource several times, and they said, nope, as far as we're concerned, the way we are reading it is it's discharged, there's no money owed on it left. And I said, well, so is all the money used up? And they said, no, there's a $977 credit, and there's a little bit of change too.
I think in the documentation, he changed the names on the account to TRG, right?
Yes, they switched
So this
everything over to, no, actually 16 mils to the town hall.
They
Well, this was TRG's address.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so 16 Central Square, attention Troy redevelopment group, so that's
Yeah.
what they changed the
Yeah.
address
Yeah.
to.
So,
But,
Core Redevelopment Group should be able to get that money out of there.
Right,
when
so
they get it.
$977.25, so that's, will go right back to them.
Yep.
So, I mean, but I told them, do not move it, do not do anything with it, do
Yep.
not to send it to the town, do not until you are notified, so the
Yep.
TRG is just gonna have to,
Yeah, and
if
I
they
think,
want the money, they can get a hold of them and they'll send them the
Yep.
credit or whatever.
Yeah, and I think what TRG would be looking for at that point as well is a letter along with that dollar amount that says we are settled up, just because
Yes.
technically they still owe it. The way the bankruptcy closed, they still owe the money. It hasn't been discharged. But
Well-
if they want to give it back to them,
Well,
more
if,
power to them.
well, taking it what their claim was, the bankruptcy claim was $39.71
Yep.
And if you take the balance of one account, which was $27.61.88, and the balance of $47.53 from another account, the two that we still owed, then there'd be $1162.44. Then you add in that credit, it's a total that we actually owe is $185.19 from TRG.
Okay.
So it's actually
So worst case scenario, if it went back the other direction, it'd be
$185.
Yeah.
So that is good news, but as far as they're concerned right now, they said, nope, it's closed, and we're, as far as they were reading it,
Well,
it's
I
discharged.
think
So,
if it was, since it was not discharged, I think we have a moral obligation to inform them of that.
Yeah.
Well,
And they may say, look, we don't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
well, I told them several times, I
Okay.
said, no, it wasn't discharged, and they said, well, the way we're reading it is, it's been discharged, and
Then-
you
then
have a
that's fine.
970. I
Then
said, do not do anything with that money,
Yeah.
you wait until you hear from the town or TRG, whatever those two, so.
Yeah, because I think TRG would be the appropriate entity. to
Right,
reach
and that's
out
what I was
for.
thinking too,
Yeah.
if they come back on board, but if we have to
Yeah.
put somebody on there for that.
Okay.
Yeah, because there would be an appointment process, because based on their, that was sent along with all the information, I think that was in the email itself, right? Like, we had the amendments, so the articles of organization and subsequent amendments, and one of the amendments allowed the board of selectmen to appoint people to TRG. So at some point, if we find out that there's nobody to be on the board, then
Start
I'll
over.
have some recommendations, certainly. So,
Okay.
yeah, I think Herb and I will have some recommendations, and however you guys want to deal with it, that's fine. But and I think we'd definitely be interested.
Well, it sounds like, no matter what happens with the other members, it sounds like Dick Thaxton is on board.
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. That's the way he left it. So, yeah. So,
And having Mike on board is good, he's an attorney.
yeah. Yeah. So there's and I don't know. I'll find out on Thursday if anybody else is interested.
Okay.
Yeah, and if they plan on, it'd be nice if everybody just attended the first meeting. And,
Yeah, and do you have Michael's contact info?
I don't.
Stedman.
Stedman.
Yeah.
I only reached out to him through Facebook. That's all
Oh,
I have.
okay.
So if I have some better contact info for him, that'd be great. Oh, yeah, that's probably a good idea.
Okay, did you have anything else for us on that, Ben?
I don't think so.
Okay, so the way we stand on it now, the timeline moving forward is that Thursday night, you'll both be at the budget committee meeting
Yeah.
and talk to the other people there about reconvening that
Yeah.
and see what happens over the next 7 days.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll Herb will reach back out to Thaxton to see if he's, just to let him know that everybody's kind of in the know now, and there's a sense of urgency to get the band back
Yeah.
together, so to speak, and see
You
what
know,
happens.
I've been predicting for years that the outcome of the mill will be that 100 years from now, either the state or the feds will tell us that it's a hazard and we gotta tear it down, and we'll float a 30-year bond and we'll level it.
Well, that's a great point, because $600,000 of the money that was spent down there was through a demolition grant from the Fed.
Yeah.
So there's money out there to be had, you know, there's money to borrow also, but there's money out there to be had, I think, for certain things like that. It's just, you know, I'm not a grant writer, so, you know, we'd have to, I think that'd be part of one of TRG's things is to, if they weren't gonna develop
find
it,
the money, yeah.
right, try to find a portion of it at least.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, lots to talk about on that.
All right, great. Thank you, Ben.
You're welcome.
Just so you know, Ben, I'm on military starting this Saturday for
Okay.
23 days.
Okay.
I'll be back and forth from Devon's.
Okay.
So if there is a meeting in July, I just gotta know in advance so I can set up a time. And it'll have to probably be in after 6 o'clock
Okay.
so I can get back from Devon's.
All right. Well, when we reach out to Dick this week, I'll make sure he knows that so that he's kind of sets it accordingly. Yeah,
All right.
he wants you there.
All right, good.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us towards the end of the agenda. Marge, I don't know if you know everybody here. I know you know, you know Barb. Have you met Curtis Hopkins?
Yep, I met.
Okay. Ben Drugg,
I bet.
Hi.
Kyle Smith, and of course you know Alissa.
Yeah.
All right. And did
Shepherdson.
you have anything you want to report to us?
Well, there was this one thing I wanted to bring up. I brought it in back in February, I think, but people were saying, oh, let's get through town meeting and then bring it back again. So here I am. There was this bill, HB 324, that was looking at how towns tax their utility poles and what kind of revenue they get. There are two different ways. Some towns have an assessor go around and value each transmission station or pole or whatever, and they add it all up and they give you a bill and say that's what you tax Eversource with, or New England Power. You have two different ones. And other places, and this is what the bill was saying, they want the whole state to be doing this other way, where the state would say Eversource owns X $1 million worth of equipment and poles and so forth in the state, and Troy has 1.5% of it, and so their tax will be X.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are two different ways of doing it, and in some cases it amounts to quite a bit of difference in the tax revenue. And if the bill went through, most towns would lose money, but Troy would get more money. And you can change to that other way anytime you want, I believe. So I thought I'd leave this with you and see if you want to look into it. Near the
Okay.
bottom there. There's the current way, there's the other way, and then there's a plus or minus. And Troy is in the black. They would get an extra $164,000.
Ooh, we could sure use that.
So,
$164,459.38.
so the bill that passed, it wasn't a blanket bill?
It actually hasn't passed. I looked that up tonight too. It's been retained in committee. So that means it's just sitting there, and in the fall, these bills are supposed to be dealt with by a subcommittee and then brought back in January for a recommendation.
Right.
Sometimes they just fade away and die, and sometimes, and I guess other times they are brought back and voted on.
Okay, so now you're saying we have the option, but once it passes, we do not have an option.
Right,
Is
but I
that
think,
correct?
that's right, but I think if the bill passed, I think the new way would be what's better for you that you're not doing currently.
But we have the option to do that immediately.
Yes, that's my understanding. Like I say, it's been months since I really knew what I was talking about, but I think that's the bottom line.
Okay. All right, okay, I'll take this, I'll run with this one.
That's great news.
Yeah. All right.
That's what, thanks, Marge.
Thank you,
That's
Marge.
a lot of money.
Yeah.
Usually at our meetings on Monday nights, since we started at 6:30, we have a full house. I guess because of the holiday, we don't. But since you're here, Ben, do you have any questions of Marge? Kyle?
Nothing I can think of, not really.
You understand that Marge is our state representative?
I didn't know that, no.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I should have finished the introduction.
It's all right. I was just trying to process the information.
They're,
So the town currently taxes Eversource, is what you're saying?
yes, every town taxes
Yeah.
the
So
physical equipment.
kind of like how they
that's
lease the land for the stretches of the power lines, whether it's through the town.
Yeah, and if you look at your utility bill, you'll see that there's a surcharge in there, probably $1,
Yeah.
which is how they collect it back from the individual customers.
Yeah, I knew that. So now, so our current one, how is that calculated?
I think you're one of the towns that hires somebody to,
So basically, when we do
assess
a
what's
house,
in their
we send
borders.
someone out to appraise.
I also, just touch on some of the, highlights of the budget that passed.
Sorry, Marge.
Okay.
Barbara's saying, there's our welfare money.
Ooh.
Because
Yeah,
our budget
just
is
saying that.
not as high as it should be.
I prefer
One of, the budget did pass, it was passed along party lines. Republicans are the majority and they were going to pass it without talking to the Democrats pretty much. Well, the Democrats were in the room, but everything that they asked for and fought for was pretty much ignored. So I'm a Democrat, so of course I'm not happy with it, but just to try to give you some information, they've put in another business tax cut. This is the second budget in a row that has a tax cut so that businesses don't have to pay as much tax as they did before. They're trying to stimulate the economy, but it hasn't been shown to work in other cases in other states or when we've done it previously. And the first one is just starting into effect now, I believe this summer. So we haven't really seen the effect of the last cut yet. It's just starting to take effect. And any increase in economic development is not really attributable to the tax cut yet. We'll see in the future. This next one that they put in wouldn't come into effect for 2 years. It would start in the following biennium, in the new budget, after an election. So whether for good or bad, we're not going to see the effects of that for quite a while. But it does mean that we have a lot less money to work with at the state level for our budget. According to these notes that I have, tax cuts in current law from the last budget cycle will be about $20 million less for the state this year alone. And when the latest round of tax cuts are added in, that will grow until the loss by 2022 would be $128 million that year. So that plus the fact that they have increased the business deduction. It used to be $100,000 and now you don't have to pay on the first $500,000. So that's another loss to the state. And they've eliminated the electricity consumption tax starting in 2019, which is another $5.5 million for the state. So all in all, they're trying to be good to business, but from what most of us have heard, businesses are not saying that that's their biggest priority. The biggest priorities seem to be workforce development. They don't have enough workers that are ready for their jobs. Housing for those workers. In some cases, the cost of electricity is part of their concern, especially the big manufacturers.
I think we saw that with, it was a Sig Sauer that decided to move out of state, or not move out of state, but
their next
not
plan,
expand in state.
Right, is in another state. So as a result, they have less money to work with. The university system is flat funded this time, so the tuition will probably go up again. The building aid to schools, I believe, is flat funded. They're trying, for about 10 years, they've had a moratorium on building construction aid for schools, where they used to pay up to 50%, I believe. And they're trying now to at least reinstate part of that so that people that were already in the pipeline, not approved yet, but have been on the list for a few years, maybe they can start dealing with those, helping those schools, especially if it's like a safety and health issue. If they need sprinklers or if they need to remove asbestos or something, then the state will start helping again. Of course, I would rather see fewer business tax cuts and more help to the school districts. But Medicaid expansion may be in trouble because they passed this year a new work requirement, which sounds reasonable. If you're an able-bodied adult and don't have a disability, you don't have young children at home, you should be out working or in an education program to get trained or something else. And they all sound fairly reasonable, I will admit. But in order to have that be legal, we're going to need a waiver from the federal government. And if they don't give us a waiver, then we're going to lose our Medicaid expansion. And then it'll be after 2018. So that's another thing that's out there we don't know about. Alcohol and drug abuse prevention, some money was put into it not as much as some people would like to see. There is some, and in terms of developmental disability, there's still a wait list that's not really being cut into. More hospital beds, they've got a few, they need more. Elderly services, let's see, congregate housing program was suspended, foster grandparent program was suspended, not all service providers are given a pay raise. The rate increase for mental health workers in the governor's budget proposal was eliminated, but the Sununu Center got some money. Changes from the House passed. There's changes in the latest version, the past version of the budget plan will allow money to be taken away from alcohol and drug abuse funds to support the Sununu Center, which is juvenile justice programs. So it's not really what the alcohol fund is supposed to be used for. And 5% of the alcohol money that's raised in the state is supposed to go right into this alcohol treatment fund. And it's not, I guess. I don't know if it ever was, but in recent years it's been 1.7%. And this budget, I believe, doubles that to 3.5%. Better, but still not at the 5% it's supposed to be. And at a time when we're having an opioid crisis and, really that money could be used. Grant workforce program was developed in the House with bipartisan support, but was eliminated in the final agreement, even though it was completely funded by federal TANF money. So there are a lot of things that I'm not real happy about, but we do have a budget, which I guess some states don't have a budget, so they're in worse trouble than we are. So that's the update.
Thank you, Marge. Does anybody have any questions about anything that Marge has covered? No? Okay. Barbara, do you have anything else that we need to cover tonight?
No.
Curtis?
No.
Okay. Ben, anything else you want to add?
I'm good,
Kyle?
thank you very much.
Lissa, you have anything else? Okay. The week ahead, will be a short week, I think. Okay, on Wednesday I have a trustees meeting at the library. Thursday we're not meeting for festivals. We've called that.
No.
We're not. We didn't call it off. We just didn't.
We don't need it.
We don't need it. Okay.
We're raring to go.
All right.
this
And then
week.
Saturday we have our Independence Day celebration, which is being held on July 8th, not on July 4th. If you've been following us on Facebook, you know where I'm going with it.
I personally like it. I can hit multiple events with the family. Kids
Yeah.
love it.
Well, the only problem is Ringe canceled theirs.
Yeah.
So now they're holding it the same weekend as we are.
They got the idea from us.
They did. We were first.
Yeah.
I didn't really see what the issue was. I like it because I've gone Saturday and Sunday. We each went to other towns.
Yeah.
We're going to go tomorrow night to, I think, Keens or something. I can't remember what time it was. And we had choice.
I can tell you what the issue is. There is no issue.
Yeah.
We're doing it. We're doing it Saturday because we want to do it Saturday.
I thought it was quite amusing. I almost commented, but I'm just going to let it lie.
I know.
That's a good idea, because we wouldn't have changed it for
Yeah.
you, Kyle.
No, I didn't want to change it. Just
And like I
person that
pointed out,
commented, it was quite amusing. I was like,
the Declaration of Independence was not signed on July 4th. It was dated July 4th, but it was
I
signed.
think the last signature was the 10th, wasn't it?
I don't know. I think it was a couple of weeks before they got everybody in there.
Yeah.
So if we're holding it on the
Yeah,
8th,
you're right,
we're simply
each state.
celebrating the people who signed it on the 8th.
We're not followers, we're leaders.
Yes. Okay.
Well, you probably had to take a while. I had to ride horseback with a letter all the way around different states.
Okay.
Takes a while.
Someone would like to move to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Second,
All in favor?
aye.
Meeting is adjourned.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Meeting is adjourned at 7:41 p.m.